When we start any engagement with a new client, one of the first things that we do after we do our qualitative and our quantitative analysis and get to know the organization and understand the operations is we educate the managers on productivity. Everybody has to go through Productivity 101. We don't assume that anybody knows anything about productivity. And the reason why is there are a lot of managers that are doing a great job at managing their department, but they don't know productivity. They don't know what a benchmark is. They don't know what a percentile is. They may not know what an FTE is. And I say that because it's true and we've encountered it. It doesn't make them a bad manager. It just makes them uneducated on productivity. And so it's really, really important that we start on a level playing field and everybody is educated on the definitions behind productivity, the calculations behind productivity, so that when we really start to manage it, there's a higher understanding. So we've taken that manager and we've elevated their understanding of productivity and what it means to their operations.
And I think it's really important as a manager that, one does understand what productivity means to their department. And if you do not understand the calculations, if you do not understand the definitions, if you do not understand what the numbers actually mean to you, you're unable to interpret it. And it doesn't make as much sense for you to actually understand what levers you need to pull to actually have the improvement. So education is at the core of everything that we do. And going back to Productivity 101 and actually starting from the calculations and the definitions, I often find that one of the struggles is individuals may not remember as much of Algebra 2 as they should, or maybe they never learned algebra or Algebra 2 in the first place, right? So I think it's important to actually bring those definitions and equations back to the table, because at the root of it, they're not difficult calculations, but they're ones we don't use every day. And because we're not using every day, we forget. So actually showing the 2 to 3 steps that it takes to calculate your volume adjusted budget and how you get your variance helps a manager understand the numbers, because then we can actually relate that it's not this big shiny black box that we're shaking and dumping off onto the table with their numbers in it. They are actually coming from thoughtful benchmarks that are created from comparative knowledge and calculations based off the actual volume. And there is math behind it. We're not just rolling the dice and saying, oh, I think 3 would be the appropriate people for you to have in your department today. It's based off the logical calculation and definitions.
And it's why when we do those education sessions or when we're sitting down with a manager, I am probably the most guilty of saying target times volume divided by 80, target times volume divided by 80, because I continually bring them back to that calculation, because it's that calculation. It's not a guess. I'm not throwing darts at a dartboard. It's really that target times volume divided by 80 that's going to give you the recommended FTEs. And so I like to just drill that definition, that calculation home anytime I'm doing an education session. And when you really start to peel back the layers and work with the managers, you start to learn a little bit more about what they don't know. And so in a recent conversation, I actually had to sit down with a manager and help them differentiate between a percentage and a percentile. And because I use that language every day, and I talk in that language and I use those calculations on a regular basis, I lost sight of the fact that some people might not. And we really had to define the difference between a percentage and a percentile. Similarly, we often have to define the difference between a benchmark and a target, because those are 2 different things as well. And again, going back to that level playing field, assuming that the managers know nothing and helping to then educate and elevate them to that level of confidence where they can manage their productivity.
You don't know what you don't know. And education provides that basis for actually building upon the foundation and building upon your skill set so that you can ultimately influence the productivity within your department.